This session. So hello everyone, it is Webinar Wednesday. My name is Samantha DeLeon and I am part of the International ACAC Communications Committee, and I'm here today to present with a great panelist about surviving the summer conference as an introvert. And so thank you for joining us, whether it's evening, morning, it might be 2 a.m. where you are, or in the middle of the day, so thank you so very much. Again, this is our last webinar of the series and we'll continue back in September, but just so you know, this will be recorded, so you'll have access to maybe watching this maybe right before you fly out for Case Western this year. So I'm actually going to hand it off to my panelists and they're going to go ahead and introduce themselves.
Hello, my name is Bridget Herrera. I'm in my first year at the American International School of DACA. Previous to that, I was 30 years in Latin America. And I went to my first International ACAC conference in 1999. So I'll be going to, I think, my 18th, 19th.
Hi everybody, good morning from Singapore. My name is Joan Liu and I work at the United World College of Southeast Asia. This is my 4th year here. Prior to this, I was in Turkey and England, and I think my first was ACAC back then. The conference was at Michigan State, which I think was 2005, 2006, somewhere around there.
Hi everyone, my name is Jen Melton, and I'm in my 3rd year at the International School Bangkok here in Thailand. So I should say Sawadee Ka. And I think I've been to, I was trying to count 8 ACAC and International ACAC conferences.
And my name is Todd Daniel. I'm in Sao Paulo, Brazil. This is my 5th year at Graded, and I've attended 4 international ACACs.
Perfect. And I'm just going to ask a question to some of our audience right now, a poll. The question is going to show up on your screen, so go ahead and take some time to answer it. But the question is, what do you think is your greatest introverted strength you bring to your work? And so I believe that it should pop up on your screen right now, and I will kind of give it some time for you guys to answer it. So hopefully you guys see that if you are attending, and definitely let us see what you're looking for this question. I'll give it a couple more seconds and then I'll throw it back to our panelists so then they can continue on with our conversation. Perfect. And so let me just share the results because it's the excellent listening skills and the strong individual relationships that came in. The 67% was the excellent listening skills. So thank you guys so much for participating on that poll. And I'll just go ahead to the next slide. So then that way we can go ahead and learn a little bit more about how we can, as International ACAC committee members and part of just the organization, help someone come to the International ACAC conference and feel welcome and utilize everything, the tools that you have in order to make yourself successful. So let me go ahead and reopen the presentation. So go ahead. I believe this is Jen now.
So just to kind of get started, we wanted to give you an overview of our session this morning, this evening, wherever you are. We know that as introverts, we don't always like the unexpected, and sometimes it's nice for us to plan things out a little bit. So we're going to give you a preview of the program this summer at the conference, give you an idea of what some of the larger events look like. And we'll talk a little bit about those of us who really like to plan, so hopefully that will help you maximize everything that you can get out of the conference. You know, we ask that our students reflect on kind of what their own strengths are, and so it's good for us to validate some of ours as well. So staying true to our temperament is what makes us authentic and respected. And we also know that especially at International ACAC, it's a place where you have to put yourself out there. So for those of us who are introverts, that's not always the easiest thing to do. So it's important for us to recognize that we all network and conference in our own way, and that's perfectly okay. And the next slide. So hi, my name is Jen, and I'm an introvert. So really, you know, if you are someone who identifies as an introvert, how do you maximize a conference like International? And I love to plan. People always tease me about my vacations. I'm always looking a year out, and it's kind of a bit the same with the conference in the summer. I like to kind of look and see what's the schedule, what's happening, what can I do where. So I think that's pretty common for a lot of us who identify as introverts. So the other thing to remember, which isn't always easy for us, is that small talk is important at the conference. So just try to focus on making a good first impression, introducing yourself and conveying warmth, which is something that introverts are usually pretty good at doing. One of the other things I think we'll kind of refer to a little bit more later is writing. And I saw that was one of the things that came up, reflective writing in the poll just now. So, you know, take business cards when you meet people if you need to. Jot down some notes on the business cards afterwards. Great things just to kind of follow up and refer to. And one of the other things you'll see on the PowerPoint right there, the book Quiet. I'm not sure how many of you have read that book, but it's a great resource, and I know when I read it I thought, oh, this woman gets me, by Susan Cain. And I particularly love, if you haven't seen her TED Talk, I'd really recommend watching her TED Talk. Her opening resonates with me. She starts off talking about, as a kid, going to camp and what she thought that was going to be like. And I thought that was perfect for International ACAC because so many people refer to it as summer camp. So great just kind of TED Talk to get into if you haven't seen it before.
Okay, I think next slide. Yeah. So Jen, I actually have watched that TED Talk myself and also read the book, and I just like to echo what Jen said because it's a great book and it really makes you see introverts in a different way. And it also gives you a sense of the kind of strengths that you can bring to the table as an introvert, whether you're in leadership or you are just participating. So anyhow, the conferences are a little bit difficult because I think conferences in general are structured for like high volume, high velocity. You're meeting a lot of people. They're kind of ideal for extroverts, but I believe harder for introverts. And so one of the things that I've learned over the years, if velocity and volume isn't sort of your strength or you don't thrive in those types of situations, is first of all to kind of look at your definition of what it means to make the most of a conference. So I used to go to conferences and I used to think, okay, taking advantage of everything means that I've got to do everything. So I've got to do all the social events, I've got to stay from the beginning to the end or even afterwards. And now I've come to realize that for me, what's great is I get to events early, sometimes I leave early. I kind of think to myself, making the most of the conference doesn't necessarily mean I've got to go to every single event, even though there are lots of great events on the table, and that I can still represent my school well. And so that is something that helps me. I think the other thing that helps me is that, so we have a thing here at my school called the professional no, which is when you start to feel overwhelmed or you start to feel like there's almost too much on your plate, the better thing to do is to kind of say no very professionally, say no, thank you, and to kind of take care of yourself, because that's a great way to take care of your school as well. So anyhow. I think the next slide is Todd's.
It is. So, and I think there's supposed to be another poll. Sam?
Let me pull that poll up for you guys. Sorry about that. Let me see. In terms of the International ACAC, I'm just going to go ahead and ask, how many International ACAC conferences have you previously attended? And so we just want to, take a feel for maybe some of the people. And if this is your first time, great. If it's maybe your third time, there's always something that you can learn from this. So I'd love to see what everyone says. I'll give it a couple more seconds and I'll go ahead and share these results. Okay, so it looks like 50% of you guys are going to be first timers here coming into Case Western, and so I believe it's going to be a great opportunity and experience for you all. I think that might have been the poll. I'll go ahead though and I will share it back with Todd on that, or is it Bridget?
I think it's my slide.
Oh, is it your slide? Okay.
I'm not. Well, anyway, let's see. What slide are we on? Yes, the welcome. So, I mean, this conference starts off with a bang because we all joined together in one venue, about 1,300 of us, for a welcome. And you will see the enormity of it at that moment. And you'll find that a lot of people know each other, but there are plenty of other people who don't know, nearly as many. My suggestion is, and Joan alluded to this, is that you put together a plan if you're a person who is self-identified maybe as an introvert. I am perhaps I'm one of those people who pretend to be an extrovert, but maybe I'm quietly an introvert, I'm not sure. But a plan helps because the conference is very busy and there are so many things to do and places to be. The plan helps keep you moving. I say if you always have a place to go and a place to be, looking at your watch, looking at your map, it means you don't have to stop and just hang around and participate in small talk so much. So map out a plan for yourself and a strategy for the conference. You can work in times, like, oh, here's an event that I think I'll skip, or maybe I'll go a little later to and find time to just go to my room. You can also look at the different sessions and see which ones you're going to go to, see which panelists you might want to follow up with afterwards. Having a plan in place, knowing which sessions you want to go to, also gives you something to talk about when you're standing in the coffee line. Oh, what session are you going to next? You already have something like at the ready if you can't think of other things to say. I also suggest you keep an eye out for other people who might be struggling. There are a lot of people there who, might be even in the U.S. for the first time. And it's nice to be able to just notice somebody standing alone, eating alone, and go up and engage them. It's, even though I've been to so many conferences, it still is overwhelming. It still is overwhelming. That's it.
Okay. In terms of the other opportunities, if this is your first International ACAC, there is a first-timers session that occurs before that big opening ceremony with all 1,200 of us. About 1/3 of the conference attendees are also first-timers, so you don't have to feel like you're the only one. And so it's a great opportunity for you to get tips in terms of from people that have attended, how to maximize your time, but also to meet other people that are in a similar situation and perhaps create a bond with a couple of them so that you'll see a familiar face around the next 3 days. That'll help kind of lower anxieties as well, at least that does for me. I think that looking at this picture, just like watching films that are like from planes looking down at great heights. My stomach lurches a little bit at this. This seems very overwhelming. So making those connections with one or two people just really does help give you that foothold and that comfort level, I think, while you're there. Next slide. And so as introverts, for us, it's often about making the connections with one or two people and just having those deeper conversations rather than being in groups and getting energized from that. And one of the examples that I had was my first year in Brazil. I worked with Corey Miller, and every year at International ACAC now, we've found an empty golf cart and just sat down in the back of it, going nowhere, just sitting in place and just catching up, you know, what's going on with our lives, what are we seeing with our students, what kind of problems are we seeing and how are we handling them. And it's just a nice break from the bustle, and it's professional development, it's personal development for me, and it's that recharging moment. So, you know, find a golf cart moment for yourself. I think that there's really great value for you and your students and your schools by doing that. One of the other things that has occurred in the past international ACACs is, you know, Brazil's a very large country and Sao Paulo's, you know, a city of about 18 million. And so we don't always see other counselors at international schools or local schools. And so we usually set time during a lunch or a dinner just for the Brazilian counselors to sit down, get to know each other if we haven't met, but also talk about trends within, you know, that we're seeing within our country and within our city. And again, just a great opportunity for that smaller conversation, deeper, richer conversation. University reps sometimes ask to join us because they want to know more about the region as well. So I just think that those opportunities to create smaller cohorts within this bigger venue is really valuable. Next slide.
Todd, I think I remember you saying that you wouldn't be at the conference this summer. You're going to do something else, so I'm going to hunt down Corey in that golf cart.
To give her a hug for me.
So, you know, Todd was talking about the first timer session, and it's been a while. I think it was 2006 that I first went to my first conference, but for me, that first timer session is kind of like your first year of college. When you go off, the people who live on your hall, those first people you meet, where, you know, to some extent you might go kind of your own separate ways within your 3 or 4 years at undergrad, but you still see each other around campus and you're like, okay, I got you. I know that person. We go back to the first timer session. And so that still happens for me years later. So knowing that there are a lot of people who are listening and this is their first time going to the conference, I'd really recommend it. It's also kind of an easier entrance to the conference than that first big kind of opening session as well. So on day 2 of the conference, this is kind of the bulk of the conference. This is the big full day of so many different things going on. Again, you know, we talked a little bit earlier about business cards or kind of taking notes and how that might help you process the information a bit and what's happening. We talked about bringing business cards as well. So you'll see that this day is made up of a fair, which Joan will talk about, and then also some of the workshops or the sessions. So we'll go to the next slide and we'll talk a little bit about those workshops.
Yeah, actually before we head to that next slide, I do have a question. There, you know, I think especially with International ACAC, we like to follow everyone on social media. So the question that we have is maybe which social media platform or digital tools are you most likely to use to record your learning? And so I remember at one International ACAC, while some of the people are filling this out, We actually were Instagramming a lot of it, and I believe that was maybe one of my first or second conferences at USF. But Jen did mention something, bring business cards. Bring more than you think you're going to need, because not only are you networking with guidance counselors, but also university representatives. And so from the university end, you might realize, hey, this might be a good person to travel with in the fall, and you just want to be able to exchange those business cards. So going back to the poll, though, like how are you basically going to take notes? Where are you going to put them? I'm going to go ahead and share these results, because I think it comes back to either an iPad or laptop, or the good old handwritten notes. And I think that's always good. So thanks for everyone participating in that question. And then I'm going to turn it to the next slide right over here.
Pam, I don't think we have the next slide yet. There we go. So the workshops. That was a great poll about kind of taking notes. I think with a lot of people listening, I'm usually one of those iPad people. And of course, like many of us do, just like our kids, multitasking a little bit. So maybe doing a little bit of Instagram, a little bit of tweeting, and then I've got Evernote open for my notes ready to go. So kind of at the workshops, you'll find so many different workshops every year. I learn something new from these. But you're in a room, and there are a lot of talented people there, a lot of knowledge, experience, and then also a lot of people talking and sharing ideas and asking questions. And sometimes for some of us, that's not always the most comfortable way to engage with that particular session. We might engage in a bit more of a quieter way. And so like I said, for me, I've got my iPad up, I've got Evernote going, and I'm writing down notes, but I'm also kind of writing down reflections of what I think about something, or how I might be able to use that in my own profession. And for me, that's a good way to engage. So I usually only ask questions if I have something that's a really burning question, but I love to hear other people's as well. And something that that I think Joan shared, and I kind of read a bit about, was tweeting during workshops. And I know in that poll there weren't a lot of people doing that, but I read an interesting article that said that introverts are actually some of the best users of Twitter, and that it helped them engage a lot more with what's going on around them. The other thing is, when you do that, it's another way, it's a different way of connecting than always a face-to-face connection. And one of the things that I also read that really resonated with me was, sometimes I'm someone who has to get my thoughts out on paper first, and sometimes communicating in written form is a bit easier for me than always communicating right out of the gate personally. So for me, and this quote that I read said that that it's much more clarifying than speaking to others. So something to think about and maybe plan and prepare for as you get ready to head to the conference. The next slide.
Well, something else to prepare yourself for is the college fair, whether you're a counselor or a university rep. It's a time when the 1,300 of us come together again in one venue, and it is another opportunity to network like crazy, but it's not for the weak of heart, let me tell you. I suggest, you take a full water bottle, wear lightweight clothing because it can get warm, comfortable shoes, and the throat lozenge, because you'll be talking, and you'll be talking loud in order for others to hear you. Definitely, if you're an introvert or not, I think you need to go into the fair with some sort of a game plan. If you're a counselor, you may want to target specific universities. that you want to speak with. Corey Miller says she prints out, her students' perspective list from Naviance and then targets those particular schools that her students are looking at. That might work for you if you're newer to the profession or it's your first fair. You might want to just go gathering information about some schools you're not familiar with. You might, if nothing else, want to go and talk to some representatives who have visited in the past and ask if they'll be coming back through. I often like to find people, like this is when I know I'm going to find specific people. The rest of the fair, I'll be lucky if I see, let's say, the Franklin and Marshall representative during the whole conference. But I know that at the university fair, I can go to that table and I will find her. So if I want to make sure to find some people to offer them thanks, for funding my student, for recognizing their talents, I might choose the fair as that place to do that because I know I'm going to find that person. But the fair is a great opportunity to ask those questions that you just need to know from different university representatives and to get your name out there, to be handing out your card, to let them know you want to see them on your campus, again, speaking from the perspective of a counselor. It's a exhausting 90 minutes, but it's generally very worthwhile. And it's what we're there for, right?
Okay, so we've day 3, and you're looking at the schedule here. And you've got some more educational sessions. You've got the high school fair. So as Bridget said, when you saw that picture, I don't know if that was the high school fair or the college fair, but there are 2 fairs. And so basically, there's one fair where all the college representatives are behind their tables, and then there's another fair where all the high school reps are behind their tables, and it's sort of a flipped situation. So there are actually 2 opportunities to see people if you want to connect in a more formal space. As you can see, the schedule is really packed. I mean, you can really literally go from 7 in the morning to 3 in the morning for the next day, and it can get really exhausting in a way. And so one of the things that I try to do when I'm at the conference is if you remember that first slide of reflecting, I carry a little notebook with me to every session, and I write down maybe 1 or 2 takeaways. The other reason why I do that is because not everybody in your office can make it to the conference. And so if you write down some takeaways, you can bring it back to your office, share the things that you've learned, and then start to implement them. Because I think one of the really important things you want to do at the conference is take some ideas and then translate them into action once you get back into your school or your college or university.
I just want to kind of throw in, as everybody's been showing you, the days are really packed. On day 2, it actually started with the 5K run, which is something that's a fundraiser for the Scholars Program. Great opportunity. I don't like running in crowds. I've done it once. I don't want to do it again. I pay not to run, but I'll start my day with a run out by myself or with a friend or with a small group of people. I'm still supporting the program, but I'm also taking care of myself. So you can find moments throughout these busy times to do what you need to do. If it's taking notes for yourself or going out and working out in the university gym, whatever it is, you need to find the time so that when you are engaged in conversations or in sessions, you can maximize your time because you have recharged. The next slide.
The other thing that I like to do when I'm taking notes is you know, you heard Bridget say that sometimes the conversations can be very, very short, and literally they can be like 1 minute, 2 minutes, and then that's the entirety of the conversation that you have with that particular school for the whole conference, unless you see them at the fair. And so one thing that I also like to do is I like to write down anybody who I want to follow up with, because the conference we see each other once a year, but really the majority of your work is taking place outside of the conference. And so if there's somebody that I want to ask more of a question to, or sometimes I want to know something more deeply about financial aid, sometimes I want to follow up on a particular student, and so I will just write it down in my journal, and I'll actually take some time after the conference to just follow up. I have a little thing in my schedule that says close the conference, and for me that just means following up and trying to sustain some of those shorter conversations that we've had at the conference. And that helps me as an introvert.
So Bridget, Joan, and Todd, I don't know how you all feel about kind of going into the conference, but I'm always really excited and looking forward to it, but also just a little bit, even after a number of years, a little bit overwhelmed. And so I think taking care of yourself is important. Think about what you're going to do after the conference. And I think we'll talk about a little bit of that in just a minute on the next slide too.
Next slide. Jen, did you want to elaborate on that? Because I think you've got some great suggestions.
Yeah. You know, one of the things is, as time has gone on, I have met more people at the conference who are even just as they're traveling around, who are introverts. And so it's kind of like when you're walking around, it's kind of like, okay, there's one of my people. There's one of my people. Okay, I get. And you kind of have these quick little check-ins. Like Joan was saying, that just kind of a quick 1 minute. And a lot of times just seeing someone else and them knowing, okay, Jen, how you doing? Is great. And for me, that helps me recharge just a little bit, knowing that there are other people there who get me. And again, if you're a first-timer, sometimes going to that first-timer session is a place where you can meet your people, or as Todd was talking about, people from your region, if you know some of them and they kind of get you, I think that helps me get through the long haul of those full 3 days. But the other thing that I do is I always think about after the conference. So, you know, when I'm planning my flights, what am I going to do after the conference? And for me, it's usually something that's going to be significant, but to some people small. So that might be just going to visit my college roommate and her twin boys and just relaxing. Maybe going for a hike, just doing something, cuddling up with a great book that I wanted to read. So I usually try to plan in something right after the conference to relax and recharge. And I always leave the conference incredibly and professionally excited. You know, it gives me kind of that enthusiasm going into the next year, the next cycle. But personally, I am exhausted. So for me, it's really helpful to plan something right after the conference.
And just on that note, I echo what Jen says. It's a really exhilarating conference. And for those of you, I know that like 50% of you who are here are coming to the conference for the first time. And I just have to say, this is a really amazing community. I think it's a very warm and open community. We are all people who want to know about other countries and what life is like. And so it's very easy to talk very personally and also very professionally at the conference. I would also say that I really admire that there are a lot of people in this profession and at this conference who view this job not just as work that you've got to go to from 9 to 4, but as a calling. And we love students and we love international education. So I think you're going to find a lot of people who share your values, a lot of like-minded people, and it is exhilarating. And as an introvert, it's fantastic. So even though I personally find a lot of the crowd events difficult, I am also very thankful that we can all be gathered in one place and just exchange ideas and best practices, and then there's an opportunity afterwards to put that into action.
Right. I would like to echo that you know, we form so many friendships within our international community, and it's a time that we, you know, this special time that we get to be with each other. At least I see it that way. Sometimes my husband says, oh, I think I'll go along, and I'm like, no, no, this is my time with, you know, 1,300 of my best friends. It's just for me. So it's not just work.
almost to the end of our presentation, so if we could advance to the next slide.
Oh, questions.
Sam, I don't think we can hear you.
I'm sorry, I was muted there for a second. We got a message from David Schubert who said, you know, don't forget about the pre-conference activities. And one of the things that's really important about the International ACAC community, as which was said by the panelists and my colleagues here, is that we are wanting to mentor people. We want to make sure that you feel welcome if this is your first time, your 10th time. And just so you know, there are a lot of committees within International ACAC. I know there's actually a mentors committee. Feel free to follow up with anyone that you might see on their badge and they say, you know, part of the communications committee. If there's something that maybe you're interested in getting involved in but you're not too sure, it might be best to just maybe pull someone aside if you're comfortable enough to do that. But know that we are going to be supporting everyone who's coming to this conference. But I was looking if there was any questions, and I didn't get any questions from the audience at this time. Whether you're an introvert or extrovert, you're more than welcome to put some questions in the box just in case you didn't know that. So over to the right-hand side, there's a chat box for you, and if you do have any questions to either any of the panelists, I myself am a recruiter, and so again, I know they mentioned bring business cards. It's probably one of the best things that you can do, and I think Jen mentioned it, follow up with people, because I think it's going to serve not only you, but also your institutions later on. So we'll kind of leave it to, I guess, the panelists if you have any questions for any one of them here.
Sam, I like what Dave was saying about, and what you were saying about committees. I know that in the early days when committees were just kind of getting formed, I joined one of them, and that was a great way for me to connect on a bit of a smaller level, too, with a great group of people. I also learned a tremendous amount. Bridget was on that panel, and I remember whenever there was a question that came forward for our committee, she was just a fountain. She knew so much, and she asked us some great reflective questions as a committee. So for me, that was a great way to engage too.
And just to follow up with what David said about the pre-conference institutes, they are a smaller cohort, and so it's very nice to enter the conference, do the pre-conference institute. I know that there are programs for leadership, and then there are also programs for admissions officers and college counseling 101. So emerging professionals, those of you who have been in the field maybe 0 to 3 years. And it's 2 days, and it's maybe 200, 300 people. And then on the third day, which is Wednesday, everybody comes, and then we're all 1,200. So take the time if you are coming to the pre-conference to really get to know people. It's a fantastic, smaller type of forum.
I think there's no end to the opportunities to interact with somebody during the conference. You know, we have all of the breaks after the sessions where you're standing in line to get coffee or something. It's a great time to just turn to the person to your side and introduce yourself. There are always people looking a little lost, somebody eating alone, and every one of those moments is an opportunity to say hi and introduce yourself. I know I love Todd's description of his time with Corey in the golf cart. If there's the chance to take a bus ride somewhere, if we're busing to another venue, I love the time on the bus to sit next to somebody, and I usually try to choose to sit next to someone I don't know, just for the chance to get to know somebody new.
It's also a very informal conference. If you look at I think you guys have seen the pictures. It's not sort of suit and tie and very formal. It's a very, very almost casual, like Jen said, almost summer camp type of feel. So you can feel free to talk to people about, you know, personal things, professional things, that line there is very fluid. It's not like other conferences I've been to where it's just all business. I mean, the business we are there to do, but just please know that culturally, the unofficial rules are that you can kind of talk about really anything.
Right. Next jobs, next country.
Kids.
I mean, and I do believe that this conference, we see each other maybe once a year, maybe twice a year, just because we're spread throughout the world. So it really is a time for people who know each other to get back together. But for people who are just getting into the field, I know that there are about 50% of you who are first timers coming to Case Western this year. You know, we're a very friendly group of people, I would have to say. And so definitely just feel free to just go up to someone and say, I don't know where I'm going. Chances are this is everyone's first time at a new university. I don't know where the dorm is that I'm staying at. And chances are the person that you're talking to doesn't know either. The only people who might know are the current students who are working there or the administrators. So, you know, it's really a great conference to meet people from around the world and just talk to them. And so, again, I'm not getting any questions from the audience, but does anyone have any closing remarks they might want to share, any of the panelists maybe?
Well, I know we do have a slide of references, and so anybody who cares to download the presentation when it goes on the website will be able to go to any of those links to learn more how introverts, counselors, students can survive in this extroverted world.
And there's some links there to some of the Susan Cain, the TED Talk, and her book as well.
Oh, thank you.
And just in terms of planning, on the Facebook page yesterday, I believe the registrants list was released. So you can, as Jen says, plan. You can go through that list and see people that you want to maybe connect with or schools that you want to learn more about. And I would also just say the content of the sessions is phenomenal. There are lots of, oh my gosh, there's so many different topics on the admission side. There's regionally specific topics. There's things like, you know, how to recruit in the Middle East. I mean, from past conferences, financial aid is part of every session block. So if you spend some time looking at that conference booklet before you go into the conference, you can actually build for yourself almost like a learning curriculum and bring back fantastic ideas to your school.
Okay, and actually now I'm seeing some of the questions pop up. So I'm going to leave the resource page available, so if someone's maybe trying to copy or put it in a link, they can do that. Someone had mentioned, you know, I'm notoriously bad with names, school names, counselor names. Any suggestion on how to help me approach people I've met before but don't immediately remember? That's fun.
Yeah, after 19 of these, I can tell you I've met so many. It's like, I know you. You know, take a good look, a quick glance at the name tag. Or just remind me where we met.
I think that's true, Bridget. Definitely. I mean, I say that, and I know people say that to me before, and especially if you've been at some different institutions, it's always like, where are you again? I think that's an acceptable question to ask. I would not be offended if someone asked me that at all.
And that is fair to say, because I think a lot of us move institutions, whether it's across the world, if you're on the high school side, or even the university side. So you could just look at their name badge and be like, I thought you were at this university, and you're also looking at their name. So I think that's a good way to put it. You know, I know that this might be a little too much, but chances are you might be Facebook friends already. There is a Facebook community for the International ACAC organization if you're a member. And then again, as mentioned, that there are people, the list of registrants are there as well. So that might be something to also help you. I do have a second question as well. Is it too late to sign up for any pre-conference activities? And what is the best way?
I believe the pre-conference is full at the moment. So for this year, it's closed. David, if you're listening, you can correct me if I'm wrong about that. So I would say that for next year, though, you can this is run every year, pre-conference workshops, and there's generally a counseling 101, there's generally an admissions 101. This year there was added a leadership kind of institute. So I would say look for that for next year, but this year I think it's closed.
And then yes, David did just say that unfortunately it is closed. And it is registration, just so you know, for anyone who's thinking about a pre-conference, it's tied to the main registration. So if you are maybe considering it and you're thinking of maybe a pre-conference next year, just know that when you register for International ACAC, you'll have to register for pre-conference. So thanks, Joan, for that clarification, as well as Dave as well. And I think,
Sam, I just want to interject too and kind of promote some of the regional institutes that are happening.
sure.
Been a new initiative, I think, of the boards, and I think that's a great way on a bit of a smaller scale to kind of have, or those of us who kind of go back a little bit further into what the conference used to be, just kind of a smaller network, and it's a great way just to meet people in your region. Maybe they're not in your country, but maybe they're in your area. So keep an eye on those every year as other opportunities.
Great advice. If no one has any other questions, I'm going to go ahead and advance it to our final slide. Again, this was our final webinar Wednesday, but we always look for suggestions from the International ACAC committees as well as our community here. And so you'll see two emails, Corey as well as Mitsuka, I believe. If you have any suggestions, we are definitely willing to take them and possibly host more webinars this upcoming September. I think there's been great advice from Todd, Jen, Joan, and Bridget. So thank you guys from wherever you are in the world, because I think you basically encompass what the organization is about, and you've shared great advice. So if this is the first time you're attending, definitely say hi to each and every one of us, and we look forward to seeing you at Case Western or hopefully in the future. So thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful day or evening.
See you at the conference.
Bye.